People keep asking what's the next book they need to read, and the answer is very simple. It's Storm of Secrets and Sorrow by Melissa K. Rorick.
In a world created for the descendants of gods, where the Fae are born to serve, a woman bound to the air of death fights fate and desire. Storm of Secrets and Sorrow is book 2 of the best-selling BookTok sensation, a contemporary dark romantasy legacy series for fans of Sarah J. Maas, Kaylee Smith, and Rebecca Yarros.
The second I knew that this book had me was when I realized it had gods, dragons, shifters, vampires, and witches. It has it all for you.
It even has my favorite tropes like morally gray characters, meddling gods, forced proximity, touch her or him and die, one bed, one horse, he falls first, enemies with benefits, like you can't go wrong.
And everyone knows that it is fantastic because the first book was independently published back in 2023, and the series was a #1 Amazon bestseller with nearly 40,000 Goodread reviews and 16,000 Amazon reviews as of 2025. So you know it's grown even more.
And when it was published traditionally, it was an instant New York Times bestseller.
Make sure you get your copy today of Storms of Secrets and Sorrow. It has an incredible deluxe special edition with stenciled edges, a beautiful foil-stamped hardcover, exclusive design with illustrated end papers, and full-color character art.
You can find Storm of Secrets and Sorrow by Melissa K. Rorick wherever books are sold in print and in ebook.
If your favorite romances are dark, addictive, and just a little bit dangerous, let me recommend The Dare by New York Times bestselling author Harley LaRue.
This viral novella serves as the perfect introduction to Harley's bestselling Losers universe. Jessica was the untouchable prom queen. Manson was the outcast she made sure everyone feared. Years later, one Halloween party, one game of Drink or Dare, and one impossible challenge forced them into a night that changes everything they thought they knew about each other.
If you love bully romances, enemies to lover tension, morally complicated characters, queer representation, and stories that aren't afraid to explore the darker side of desire and devotion, this one's for you.
This gorgeous new edition also includes a full gold foil cover and an exclusive bonus novella, Ghosted, available in print for the very first time. Fun fact, The Dare became infamous after Amazon temporarily banned it for being too sexy, helping cement Harley LaRue as one of dark romance's most talked about voices.
The Dare by Harley LaRue, available now wherever books are sold.
Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
I can't stop scratching my downtown. Yeah, but I'm not itching to go downtown and tell a receptionist I'm here to talk about my downtown. Some things you'd rather type than say out loud.
There's no question too embarrassing for Amazon Health AI. Chat your symptoms and get virtual care 24/7. Healthcare just got less painful.
Hey there, we're Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously.
We bring the tools of literary analysis to the women-written novels lighting up Book Talk, from romance to romantasy. Think of it as your favorite fandom books, treated with the same respect you'd give a classic in a literature class, just with more humor and less homework. Except for today.
Oh, right, yeah. This is all about your homework. I'm Jac. I studied creative writing for my bachelor's degree and comparative literature for my master's degree at Queen Mary University of London. And on this show, I usually read through a feminist lens, which is a heteronormative lens that does not reflect my own views on gender.
And I'm Amy with a creative writing degree and a master's in education. I'm usually the one using the Marxist lens, which is hunting down the power dynamics hiding in metaphors, the use of food, and even references to animal traits.
Today's a little different. Instead of a deep diving into characters of a specific book, we're deep diving into the how of literary analysis.
This is a standalone special episode all about critical literary lenses, what they are, how we use them, and how you can use them on your current read or reread, even if it's not a book we're reading right now.
And the best part, Amy, everyone give a hand to Amy, made a worksheet that breaks down all 8 literary lenses we are covering today. There's more, but these are the 8 that we're doing.
Right. These are the 8 that we felt most relevant for what we do. You can grab this worksheet/cheat sheet using the link in our show notes, the link in our bio on our social media, or at BookTok.com.
Whether you're brand new to the show or you've been with us since season 1, this episode is designed to be evergreen. So you can come back anytime you hear us say, I'm going to use a specific literary lens. And you think, wait, what does that actually mean?
Before we dive in, we do need to talk about SPILT. That's spoilers, perspective and interpretation, language, and themes.
Spoilers. Because we're pulling examples from across our entire catalog, this episode contains spoilers for A Court of Thorns and Roses series. That's Thorns and Roses through Silver Flames. Plus light references to classics we've covered in Academia Unlocked. If you're not caught up on ACOTAR, consider this your only spoiler warning.
Perspective and interpretation. These are just our takes, our personal readings of the works that we're going to reference. We don't speak for Sarah J. Maas or any of the other authors, and we know you'll have your own interpretations of the texts. That's literally the point of this episode. We love to hear your interpretations, so please share them.
Language. We use explicit language. I already almost did, but I figured I'd wait until we've done the warning.
The warning.
Yeah, we fucking curse, okay?
So if you're new here, best of luck. Themes. Because we will be revisiting our past analyses, we will touch on tough topics like sex, violence, abuse, depression, and trauma. Those things recur throughout the podcast.
It's a bummer. Sometimes there's bummers, okay?
Yeah. Listener discretion is advised.
When it comes to like some of the harder things, we do try to flag it beforehand, so extra caution. As always, let's keep the conversation going. Tag us, DM us, or use a submission form on our website. And if you want exclusive content and live streams, you'll find us over at patreon.com/BookTok for BookTok.
So typically during an analysis episode, we do ask ourselves a question, and I went ahead and wrote one anyway. It's a little rhetorical, but we're doing it for the hell of it. Does knowing the quote-unquote tools of the trade change how you as a reader experience a book? AKA, does analysis deepen the magic or break the spell?
It's going to be a fun one to talk at the end.
So let's start with, okay, what the hell is a critical lens, a literary lens, critical literary lens, however you want to call it? So imagine a critical lens is like a pair of glasses, and you're putting on those glasses before you read. What you're reading doesn't change, but what you're capable of seeing does.
Important framing for our listeners is that there is no wrong way to read a book. Reading for vibes is totally valid. Reading for the plot is valid. A lens is just a way to read again on purpose with a question in your pocket. Every lens has a core question. That's how we structure the worksheet. Description, core question, what to watch for. If you only remember one thing per lens, remember its question. And I would like to say, like, this is truly the perfect episode to clap back at every single video that's been like, there's a literary epidemic, there's an anti-intellectual epidemic. And you sit there going, but I read quote unquote trash romance novels and fairy porn. And this is your way to say, fuck you, I'm smart.
Yeah. And just because you think it's not smart doesn't mean you can't read it in a smart way.
You've got two, in theory, smart women helping you here, okay? Whether we are or not, we have degrees. So, you know, we can at least fake it. Yeah.
We've been doing this long enough.
Yeah.
I think we've convinced some people.
Yeah.
Now, another reason why we're doing this is the fact that just because we have degrees doesn't mean this is reserved to just us. You can do it too, regardless of your background, regardless of whether you've ever taken a literature or literary class. Let's demystify the idea that reading smart is only for those with a piece of paper that they paid for.
And reading smart isn't for quote unquote smart books.
Right, exactly.
Anyone can read smart at any given time.
Yeah. So yes, the lenses we're going to talk about do come out of literary theory. And there are very smart people, psychologists, professors, famous authors who've all written scholarly papers on the lenses we're going to talk about. You don't need to go read those. We're cutting corners to give you what you need to know, not all the esoteric stuff that they put in their papers to sound smart. All you need is some curiosity, a sticky note, maybe some highlighters if you want to mark up your book if you're one of those people. I am, honestly. Sometimes I write in really faint pencil just in case I want to erase it later. Or if we're doing it for the podcast, I write in pen because I'm like, I don't want to lose this note.
I am not that person. I just keep it in my head and then forget about it later.
But either way, as long as you're interested, you're in the right place.
A key point that we want to have you remember is that using a lens does not mean you believe in the lens describes the world that you're there. All right. A lot of literature and analysis is coming up with bullshit, to be honest. My note from every season opener applies here. Using the feminist lens that takes a heteronormative view on gender roles for analysis does not mean that's how I view it. It is truly a tool. It's not an identity of the reader or of the literature. And when I'm saying literature, we're calling ACOTAR, Ice Planet Barbarians. Like when we reference books, this is now going to be called the literature.
Or the text. And to Jac's point, sometimes we make points because we see that there's evidence there, but that doesn't mean we agree. It doesn't mean that this is a personal belief. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And we'll call it out. But the point is, like, you can be completely against the lens you're using. It doesn't reflect who you are, and that's okay. The point is that it's a new way to explore the thing you've already read.
It's like what you said. You put on a pair of glasses. And are they your favorite glasses? No. Are you going to wear them out all the time? No. But like you're using them and you can see things a little bit differently.
Exactly. And there isn't any right way to use these lenses. In fact, you can use one at a time. You can use 2 or 3 or 4. They do stack on top of each other, and you can interchange them at will. It's like jewelry. Are you going to layer your jewelry today? Or are you going to go for a minimalist approach?
You're going to have a full outfit by the end of this with accessories. You're going to have glasses. You're going to have jewelry.
Who knows? You might have a vest and a necktie too.
This just got fancy. Okay.
When I read a queer character, for example, let's talk about more. It's not just about reading through a queer theory lens. There's also often a lot of power dynamics going on. So I'm also going to read through a Marxist lens. And together they do something more powerful than they would alone. We'll get into examples later.
Now people are like, Marxist. I mean, you already explained Marxist is power. Feminist lens and Marxist lens
are the ones we use the most.
Yeah, they lend into one another quite often. So the setup of the structure for this episode, our 2 main lenses, Marxist and feminist, are going to be first because we're going to ease you into it for any reoccurring listeners. Then we're going to do a speed run through the other 6, each with real examples from our catalogs.
And by catalog, we mean past episodes, not the clothing.
Yeah, it's going to make you want to go back and listen to all of them. Let's increase our downloads. Come on, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the feminist lens. And we call it Feminist Criticism. So it focuses on the role and treatment of women and/or the feminine and how it enforces or subverts heteronormative standards. And sometimes you can also like bring in the patriarchy with it because the patriarchy reflects the female experience. The core question that we like to ask ourselves is what is considered feminine versus masculine about a character, and how does it influence how they're perceived or treated? I'm going to let you guys kind of sit in that and just be like, okay, that was a long sentence. So let's go into an example here. And that is control disguised as protection. And again, protection is very much a masculine thing, right? Like, I'm going to protect you. I'm the man here. So let's go into Tamlin in Mist and Fury. Tamlin locks Farah in the manor, and it's framed as a way of keeping her safe. But the lens asks us who gets protected and who gets contained. Farah's warrior instincts are treated as something to be managed. Her trauma is met with walls instead of words. And I think that that's one of the larger, hey, here's a glaring example of that. when you want to dig deeper, you can go into book 1 and how Tamlin, quote unquote, protects Feyre as well, and how it's actually ultimately harming her and keeping her ignorant of things. And people are like, but Tamlin had no choice. He couldn't say anything.
Not the
ways.
point.
That's not the point. There's ways. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but that's literally the feminist lens, like control and everything there.
Yeah, and think about it from a feminist lens. Tamlin literally might be protecting Feyre, but he's really protecting his interests in Feyre, right? He is afraid of Feyre being harmed again. He's afraid of Rhysand taking Feyre. So really, at the end of the day, Tamlin is protecting himself because Feyre is his property. And to lose control of his property looks bad on him.
And we aren't exaggerating when we say his property. He even references that by law, Feyre belongs to him because they're engaged and they're going to get married. So by extension, like Amy said, Feyre is his property. Now, let's go into another example, which is that women's bodies are a commodity. It's a very, very common thing to see across all literature. Mor's backstory in The Court of Nightmares is that she is treated as a possession to be bred and traded, and her family literally values her body as a bargaining chip in a marriage alliance rather than her being her own person. And the feminist lens makes the horror legible as a system and not a villainous family. So, are they a horrible, evil family? Yes. But what we need to clock in when you're using the feminist lens is that they're not doing this out of nowhere. This is how their system in the night court works. Not justifying, it's understanding.
Right. And through the feminist lens, we're able to understand the horror of it from Mor's point of view, right? We recognize what the patriarchy is doing to her. It's not just about the plot that like, oh, she has trauma and that's why she doesn't like Eris and that's why Azriel feels protective of her. It's not none of that, right? It's about the actual mechanics of what is happening to her.
And for the final example, we have the dismissal or embrace of feminine strength. And I think that Nesta is a perfect example of this in Silver Flames. The narrative keeps asking whether Nesta's rage is monstrous or powerful, and whether that question would even be asked if she was a male character. Cassian, the Lord of Bloodshed, is celebrated for that. That's his title. He talks about how he massacred an entire village to get revenge for his mother, and then he was like, yeah, that took me 10 years to recover from. And then everyone's just upset with Nesta for experiencing her first war.
Right, and witnessing her father's death.
Yeah.
And deciding to drink alcohol.
Not justifying her actions or saying that she should be in this despair for 10 years. Obviously don't want that for her. But using a literary lens, you do have to call out these biases, especially when you're looking through a feminist lens. Now, things that you want to watch for when you're, reading something, and this is something that you can pull from the cheat sheet, is that freedom or control of someone's appearance. Look back to book 1, ACOTAR, with Feyre and her dresses. And then in book 2, she dresses in leathers. But book 1, she really goes back and forth between embracing the feminine and her trousers. And then you also have bodies or sexuality as commodities or weapons. And then control disguised as protection. And also dismissal or embracing the feminine traits. Another great example is that in not just ACOTAR, but in any fantasy, you often have women's nails depicted as claws. And, or sometimes they're actual claws. So that's another one where you can't have nails unless they're long. And to have them be described as claws is a great use of a feminine trait as a weapon.
Awesome. Now we're going to move into the Marxist criticism.
Before we take a sip, sorry.
Yes, take a sip. Next, we're going to jump into the Marxist lens or Marxist criticism, which is where I often talk, or the lens that I often use. Wow, it is a Sunday morning after 6 hours of sleep.
This is literally a literary break.
I don't think people understand just how much makeup we use when recording for the podcast. And switching over to Jones Road Beauty, especially their Miracle Balm, has been a lifesaver for my skin.
Instead of wearing tons of foundation, I feel like I can enhance the natural look of my skin with the Jones Road Beauty Miracle Balm.
Amy, you might relate to this. I used to do my makeup for the podcast and feel too embarrassed to leave after recording because of the amount of makeup I had on. But after I switched over to the Miracle Balm by Jones Road Beauty, I am happy to go outside.
The best part of Jones Road Beauty is that all their products are actually good for your skin. Every formula has skin-loving ingredients, and it nourishes your skin instead of clogging your pores or caking on that makeup.
And Jones Roads actually just launched their foundation stick, which I am so excited to try because the skincare forward foundation delivers buildable, real coverage while feeling completely weightless on your skin.
Modern day makeup that's clean, strategic, and multifunctional for effortless routines. For a limited time, our listeners are getting a free full-sized mascara on their first purchase when they use the code BookTok at checkout.
Just head to jonesroadbeauty.com and use code BookTalk, BookTalk, at checkout.
After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you. Now, the Marxist lens focuses on both literal and psychological power dynamics. Those power dynamics may stem from political, social, economic, ideological, or material tension. And by material, I mean like resources. The core question you might ask yourself if you're looking at something through a Marxist lens is, who is in control of the source of power? That requires you to identify the source of power. Is it resources? Is it food? Is it information? Etc. Is it religion? Is it etc., etc.? And how does that control impact others? Whether that be the main character, characters around them, society, so on and so forth. So one of our favorite examples from season 1 is the idea of food as a form of power, which is something I talk about every season, but it is, I think, most obvious in Thorns and Roses. Feyre, we know, is coming from a place of food scarcity when she first meets Tamlin. She has to hunt so that her family doesn't starve. In fact, she is currently starving when she first hunts the doe because they haven't had food, or like they just ran out of their last source of protein or something to the fact. In comparison, the spring court is overflowing with food, and Tamlin is deciding what Feyre eats. He is putting food on her platter. He is giving it to her, not asking her, is she hungry? Do you have allergies? Can you even stomach this after starving?
Do you have a peanut allergy?
Yeah. Are you gluten intolerant?
I want to say that this is something that is often found in romance books, in romance literature. And again, you might be like, but Ice Planet Barbarians. And I'm only using that because, again, people just kind of laugh it off as like an alien romance. And I'm like, you can use this lens for anything. And that's what food as power is, for many reasons that I will not get into now, is often seen in romance.
Yeah. And we see it all throughout SJM's books. Even in Silver Flames, when Nesta refuses to eat versus when she does eat, reflects her physical power as she's training. It reflects her mental power as she's healing. Food is so important. Who eats, who doesn't eat, who provides. Those things are never neutral. And so they're worth looking at.
I also want to say that just when you find someone who is using food as power, it doesn't make that character inherently bad. You can use it as an example of saying, look, this character, like in season 1, we said, wow, there were signs of Tamlin all along as being a bad guy. Right? But then there's also instances of Cassian doing this, even Rhys, so it doesn't always mean it's a bad thing. It's just pointing it out.
Right, exactly. Because you could argue they're providing. This is an expression of love. That's a perfectly valid argument. And by argument, we don't mean fight. We mean thesis or statement. And characters can do things that create power dynamics without knowing that they're creating power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
That is also completely true. Again, we're not passing judgment. We are examining and presenting evidence.
I want to give one last example of food as power used in an entirely romantic, sweet moment, and that's Farah giving Reese soup.
Mm-hmm.
And she was entirely control, and that was her showing, yes, I accept the mating bond, and that is like a sweet moment.
Right. Excellent point. So a different example of the Marxist lens is the idea of prey versus predator, or any use of animals as metaphor or comparison for characters. So let's look at Silver Flames' prologue, for example. We start in Nesta's memory of being thrown into the cauldron that takes place in Mist and Fury. And in that experience, the narrative describes her as struggling like a bird under a cat's paw. Later in chapter 1, she tells Cassian to go perch on a chimney as if he is a bird. And she's treating him the way she treated the cauldron. It's about power for her. She is the cat, the cauldron, Cassian, they are the birds. The animal language is kind of a map of sorts of where she is in the hierarchy of those she interacts with. There's so many examples. SGM loves to use animal descriptions. Amarantha calls humans pigs in Thorns and Roses. Nesta calls Feyre a pig in the start of Thorns and Roses.
And you want to think about what animal they're using to describe.
Right. What are the connotations? What is it? What are the associations?
You know, like pigs are for the slaughter. Mm-hmm. They're meant to be disgusting. Yep. They're meant to be kept in a pen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, so you have to just sit down and wonder, okay, well, if they were being described as a bird, as a cat, why a cat and not a lion or a mountain lion? You know what I mean? Like, why this and not that? And then you can, again, bullshit reasons.
Mm-hmm. Now, another example of the Marxist lens is information being withheld, but also information used as a form of currency. Rhysand in the Thorns and Roses series is the perfect example, especially in Mist and Fury. He withholds information from Feyre as much as Tamlin withholds information from Feyre. The difference is they have a quid pro quo agreement between them, where when one of them wants information, they offer information first to show vulnerability and then request information back as payment. And they literally say quid pro quo. Generally, in SJM novels, think of Aelin, Bryce, Rhys, even Feyre in Wings and Ruin, withhold information all the time. And people get annoyed at it, but there are reasons, right? It allows them control. It allows them power over a situation.
And this is a great one because you can go as broad or as narrow. Are these two characters controlling information between one another? Is this empire or nation or ruler controlling information? And what information are they controlling? So this is a great one in any scale that you can look at.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I want to also call back to is the more example I mentioned about, a queer character and this idea of possession. In Wings and Ruin, during our 3rd season, we talked about silence as a form of power, which is not unlike information as power, right? Moore's choice to own her story and choose who does or does not get to know her story is a form of power for her. And so it's not always about money or information exchange. Sometimes it's about protection of the self. Now, other things that you can watch for that might trigger, I should use the Marxist lens here. Again, we said information sharing or withholding. There's also, is there a political or social hierarchy at play that plays a role in the dynamics, the relationships, or the plot of the book? As I mentioned, food as a source or limitation of power, prey versus predator comparisons. But you can also think of it in terms of physical space. Who is physically positioned higher versus lower? Who's on their knees versus standing? Is there a barrier between the two characters? There's so many different ways to look for symbolic or literal power dynamics.
I love what you said about the hierarchy of power. when you look at ACOTAR Book 1, Amarantha had knowledge on how to keep everyone locked in, which then resulted in her being in charge of everyone, which then resulted in her giving Tamlin this task, which then resulted in Tamlin not being able to tell Farah, which then resulted in Farah not being able to tell her sisters about being locked away because they were not Nesta, but Elaine was kind of brainwashed to forget. So the hierarchy of knowledge is the hierarchy of power.
Yeah. Thank you for summarizing it that way.
Yeah. All right. Let's look at these 6 other lenses.
And we've mentioned these
Yeah.
within the last couple seasons, but we're going to try and be more explicit about them.
The first one is the archetypal criticism. So the core question that you're going to ask yourself when you're using this lens is, how does a character, plot device, or symbol align with an archetype? And what does it achieve in the story? Now, you might be wondering, what is an archetype? And that is it's like the...
Can explain it.
Yeah, I'm like, I know what it is, but I'm getting I don't know how to describe it, not in the most wordy way possible.
Sure. So an archetype you can imagine as a universal character trope, plot device, or symbol that is understood across different forms of literature, across eras, across stories. So, for example, the hero is an archetype, right? We all understand the concept of the hero, who the hero is. We all understand the concept of the villain. Those are archetypes. But you can also go deeper, right? Things that call back to myths or classical stories that we all kind of are aware of. For example, let's pick anything from the Greek traditional stories, right?
Hercules' is challenges.
Right. Great example. Or it's his labors. I think.
Yeah, his labors, yeah.
Hercules' labors is a story that you can see morphed and repeated in other stories. The Sword in the Stone with Arthur and his Knights of Camelot,
being chosen, the underdog being chosen and brought up.
Yeah.
I guess where I was stuck is I was trying to be it's the parents of a trope. So it's not a trope of necessarily enemies to lovers, but you could go into the archetype almost Romeo and Juliet. What archetype would that be? I guess I would describe that as star-crossed lovers type thing.
Yeah.
Is the archetype. Enemies to lovers is the trope.
Yeah, and that one's hard because they're not quite enemies, but their families are enemies.
Yeah.
But no, that's a good example. Let's see.
But that's what I mean. It's the parents of.
Yeah. Where does it stem from? What's another example of star-crossed lovers? It's like fated mates almost, too. Fated mates is a trope that comes from star-crossed lovers.
So an archetype, like Amy said, the hero, right? The person who achieves the goal. Tropes are the different types of heroes you might get within that.
Right. The stabby FMC.
Right. And then you have the mentor, right? And then that mentor could be grumpy old man,
Merlin,
Gandalf, but then the mentor can also be, it's often a grumpy old man, but
really
there's different types of mentors. It could be a parent, it could be a sibling. You also have the threshold guardian, who is the person, creature, gateway, who's guarding the gateway. And then herald, person who challenges the hero on something. And you even have the ally, and then the ally could be, the quirky best friend, the slutty friend, the shy friend. You also have the trickster, but the trickster who often shares wisdom. And then within that, you have the tropes within it. So it's just that one notch above trope.
Right. Especially the tropes we're familiar with. A great example of an archetype is the hero's journey. So anything, if you look at the hero's journey, a lot of stories follow the hero's journey, but the elements of the hero's journey are all archetypes, like the wise sage, meeting the mother figure or the father figure, the crossing from the status quo into the adventure. All those things are archetypes.
Tropes are culturally influenced. Archetypes are kind of perpetual.
Yeah. Again, across eras.
Yeah.
Across genres. They're typically, again, this idea of universal.
Okay, so how can we use this in ACOTAR? So in Akhmov, Mist and Fury, we have the Weaver, and her beautiful song is luring Farah in. That is the siren archetype, which is straight out of Greek mythology, where beauty is bait and you're kind of like shipwrecked and you're stranded, and Farah is stranded there. Reese just dumps her, and SJM is directly playing with that classical pattern. You also have Under the Mountain as a descent into the underworld story. You see that a lot in Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And Farah goes down and faces the trials. Hello, trials, Hercules. And then eventually she does die and is remade. And that's older, quite literally, than the alphabet. So watch for archetypes also being subverted too, because Nesta as the monster is an archetype who turns out to be the wounded healer of her own story.
Yeah. So she starts out as the monster, but the story subverts that monster archetype in the process of telling her story.
And that's kind of like just books, man, is like you just kind of go through these list of things and you're like, okay, well, what can I do and what can I subvert and what can I change and what can I keep and what can I reference? Don't think about it too hard as you're writing your own. But as a reader, it's good to reference. And then eventually when you're writing, it'll come naturally just because you have already clued yourself in so much.
And this is why we say people can't tell an original story. None of us can, because all the original stories have been told and we're just retelling them in new ways. And that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
All right, let's move into what we call eco-criticism. Now, eco-criticism is looking at how nature or the environment is portrayed and what it reflects or its relationship to the character's society or humanity. So the core question is, does the environment or the weather reflect the current interpersonal dynamics, emotions, or society at large? And what meaning does it add?
This is kind of I won't call it an easy one. It's an easier one just because you don't have weather and nature described often. So when it is described, you can flag it a lot faster and you're able to sit there and go, okay, well, how is this being described? What can I reference it? And sometimes I can't pull it out of my ass. Like sometimes I'm like, you know what? This breeze just is. This is what it is.
It is a breeze.
But sometimes you can look at it, but this is an easier one to identify.
So one thing we talked about in our first season of Thorns and Roses, I believe, or it was season 2 or 3, one of the Thorns and Roses seasons, we talked about how the spring court never changes. It's eternally spring. And that lack of change, the monotony, reflects the inability of Tamlin to change. So that's an example.
Bookmark this. We'll be right back.
I always forget how long summer is in California, and all of my work clothes are geared towards fall, winter. I need more summer appropriate staples.
I'm going to be going to Portugal at the end of the summer, and I need Quince to help me with summer vacation clothes because they have literally everything.
They make elevated essentials using premium materials like European linen, organic cotton, and washable silk, which is my personal favorite, without the traditional retail markup.
They also have amazing shoes. I got their ballerina Mary Jane flats in brown, and I will be walking Portugal in that the entire time. They are so comfortable.
I also recently discovered that they have really fabulous 14 karat gold jewelry. Everything is subtle, delicate, and just classy. Everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands because they work with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen. So you're paying for exceptional quality, not brand markup.
Quince has everything you need, from apparel to home to bedding to bath and all of the kitchen essentials and furniture. Make your summer wardrobe feel easier.
Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365 days returns. Now available in Canada too.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, for free shipping and 365-day returns.
Quince.com/booktalk. Another example is we talk about in Wuthering Heights. So looking at Academia Unlocked, the raging weather, the storms that take place reflect the inner turmoil or the tension between Kathy and Heathcliff. But it can also be more than that, depending on the type of story you're reading. Think about any Miyazaki film. His films often deal with the environment and humanity's impact on the environment. So eco-criticism can deal with themes of environmental justice, the good and the bad that humanity inflicts upon our environment. Going back to Wuthering Heights, it can be about what does the urban lifestyle versus the country rural lifestyle represent, which is better or worse. And another example that you can kind of see in fantasy novels, especially, is the Enchanted Forest a refuge or is it a threat?
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Let's take a sip.
Yeah, let's definitely take a sip. The next criticism is narratological,
which we've never really named, but we do.
Yeah, people are just like, what the fuck did you just say? Now, the core question of narratological criticism is what structural or narrative choices, and what that means is pacing, the reliability of the narrator, and the perspective of the story being told, alters the story's meaning or impact. The easiest way that you are already doing this, listener, is this an unreliable narrator?
Yep.
One time, someone on social was just like, you're just using that as a
cop-out.
And I'm like, those are books.
Yeah. Most narrators are unreliable.
Yeah. So an example that we can pull here is Mist and Fury in chapter 21 in the Weaver's Cottage. When Farah panics, SJM's sentences start to get shorter. They're one line each. The prose, she scurries like a mouse. The structure of the words on the page creates the panic in your body. And it's like quite literally meant to stress you out because you're reading through them faster and you're just going through it and you're just like, oh my God, I need to get through this because the sentences are shorter. Your eyes are taking things in and information a lot faster, just like the story and the narrator is taking in the scene a lot faster. And once you see it, you see that everywhere in any type of book, in any genre, you'll see it. It is truly something that I think that authors do naturally.
Yeah, I agree. You can even see it in examples like, when does SJM choose for a chapter to be 2 pages versus 25 pages? Like, those choices are deliberate. And what does that achieve?
Forever remember in Twilight, after Edward leaves, like he leaves and then you turn the page and it was October, November, December, and it just was saying the month and I was freaking out, like just that visceral memory. I was like, no,
what's
that was
happening?
Such a great choice. It was a fantastic choice. And, so that's one way of looking at it. Another example is in Silver Flames and the dueling POVs. Chapter 1 gives us Cassian's view of Nesta, then immediately hands us Nesta's views, and we can see how they don't match up. You can see where they are not understanding each other at all. And it shows us that Nesta is an unreliable narrator, or is Cassian an unreliable narrator? The whole structure is the question. I also feel like SJM, what she does is, and I know we're only referencing ACOTAR here, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, but in Throne of Glass and in Crescent City, those are third-person point of views, and I know that Silver Flames is also third-person, but it's just a different type of story. And Aelin and Bryce are the most, like, I'm not telling anyone shit about my plan.
Not even the reader.
No, and that wouldn't work if it was in first-person point of view, because she's keeping the reader as not in the know as everyone else in the story. An example of it not working where the narrator is in first-person point of view and is trying to keep it a secret, but it just isn't clicking, is the third book of Fourth Wing. And it's the very beginning, and Violet has this whole plan, and it's an elaborate plan, but she's structuring it in a way that the reader doesn't know what's happening. And a lot of people had issues with it. And I personally believe that's because this is a structure that doesn't work in first person.
That's fair.
So you really want to make sure you watch out for who narrates, who the audience is, and where the narrator's limits are, meaning what do they know and what do they not know. Sorry for the referencing a book from an author we hate, J.K. Rowling, do not support her. Unfortunately, Harry Potter's a great example of a narrator that gets omniscient and then gets narrow. So you have moments where it's really narrow and focused on Harry, and then you have moments where it's a lot more broad and we are able to get more information than Harry does in that moment.
Yeah, that's a good example. Another question that is implied here you can ask is like, once you've identified who is the narrator and or who's the audience, is the narrator in a mental, emotional, or logical state that biases the information that the reader is receiving? I think that's best attributed to Jac's example of Cassian versus Nesta. They can experience the same thing and have totally different interpretations of it because of their emotional state or their mental state. I think one thing that we don't reference here that we talked about in Academia Unlocked with Pride and Prejudice is this idea of epistemology, which is how has the character developed information or knowledge that can also influence what information the reader receives through the narrator's eyes. Next, we're going to move into post-colonial criticism, which we've talked about mostly in the context of other books, not always in SJM's books. I would say we're probably more likely to use it in Crescent City than we are in ACOTAR. We've used it when we talked about Quicksilver.
I was going to mention Quicksilver. One of the most fan-fucking-tastic examples of modern romantasy literature that uses actually colonialism, Spark of the Everflame.
But that's a good one. I was also going to say Alchemized.
Alchemized is another great one.
Blood Over Brighthaven.
Uh-huh.
Ugh, I just got chills. I'm like, those are such great books.
Just in case anyone doesn't know colonization or the colonizer, which is completely okay, it's when Group A is already living somewhere and Group B comes in and goes, okay, now I'm in charge, and usually is followed by a massacre. And Group B is now oppressing Group A. That is world history. That is what the colonizers did to America, the United States, with the indigenous people here, where they're like, nope, I'm here now.
Yep.
And we're going to massacre you. So that is a very common narrative in every form of literature. Red Rising. I'm trying to think of some of the academia. I don't think we talked about it too much in Academia Unlocked, but...
Yeah, not so much in Academia Unlocked. Not yet, at least.
You get it very often. It's a very, very popular story, which can be crafted and made original every single time because you are coming up with new rules, new colonizers, and new people who have been colonized.
Right. And so in the books themselves, they might not call them colonizers and colonized. They might call it empire and humans. You know, they might call it
the gods and...
Right. The gods and the humans, or it's empires and slaves, or there's so many iterations. The word colony, colonizer, colonized doesn't have to be used in the text for the principles to be applied. So the focus of post-colonial criticism can be manifold depending on the state in which the story is taking. For example, it can be the process of colonizing. It could be in the middle of like the colonizer's rule. It could be rebellion. It could be decolonization. So like fighting back and forcing the colonizers out. It's not always going to look identical. The core question then will be, what group are the colonizers? What is the group that is not original to this area that took over? Who are the colonized, or the people who are oppressed, the people who are original to the area? And how does the ruler enforce their system, and how do the colonized resist the system? So even though we didn't really talk about this in ACOTAR, you could look at this post-colonial lens. You could apply it to Amarantha and her rule under the mountain for 49 years. She is technically from Highburn and is an outside power that has come to Prythian and seized control of the courts. She's dismantled all of their ruling systems. She's forcing tithes and performances out of loyalty. She's forcing the ruling classes to live with her under the mountain, and rules through fear. the masks that everyone is wearing that they're cursed to wear, it's not just about it being a curse. It's also the erasure of their identity and forcing them to comply with her. So that's what post-colonialism is looking for in the context of ACOTAR.
I also want to make a distinction real fast that there are two ways of defining post-colonialism. I mean, you can also define it like colonization is still actively happening. Sometimes, like post-colonialism, it gets grouped in with active colonization, but there's a lot of really great literature in our world of like not fantasy that is, I'm going to say Africa. I know Africa is a continent and it's made up of many different countries, but there are many countries within Africa where there's a lot of fantastic literature on what happens after the British, after the French, after the Spaniards, the Dutch, like right after everyone leaves. You see that with a lot in South American literature, again, African literature, because of all the different countries were colonized. And it's what happens when they leave and what is going on in the culture and the people when they're picking up the pieces. So I do want to make that distinction because you can see that in potential fantasy as well, where what like the story picks up after they've already left. I actually don't see that in fantasy. And I think that would have been, I'm like putting that in my brain.
Yeah.
That would be a very interesting, because that's kind of like the quote unquote traditional post-colonialism.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you might be able to argue that Prithian is in a
I think so.
A decolonized state because of the Daglin who ruled 15,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So they are technically decolonized, but it's been long enough that they're going through recolonization sometimes too. Other things to watch for when trying to identify whether a post-colonial lens might work, you can look at not only oppression of groups, but also, is there a resistance? Is there rebel activity? Are people generally disillusioned with their ruler? One great example, and I'm thinking of 1984, is this idea of rewriting history or writing history, which we see in Crescent City as well. This idea that there was once history, but we don't know what that history is. We only know this version of history now. Also, looking at Blood Over Brighthaven, what was the original belief system of the people and what is the newer ideological belief system? What's the new religion that's taken over that people live by?
And this is a criticism that pairs very nicely with Marxists.
Yes.
A good wine and cheese combo. Now we're going to go into one of my favorite criticisms, which is psychoanalytical, because we talk about it a lot, but we never give a name to it. And sometimes when I'm describing what we're doing to people or characters, people go, you're kind of like looking at them like you're a psychiatrist. Yeah,
exactly.
That's exactly what we're doing. So the core question here is, how are characters' actions rooted in their experience? And how does that experience shape their choices? We are stepping into the role of a psychiatrist. Fucking love it. After over 10 years in therapy, I can sit here and therapize these characters. And an example we're going to use here is Farah's paintings. It starts as a way of escape and it becomes a way of processing her trauma. And by Mist and Fury, she dreams of teaching others, quote, broken in places and trying to fight it. The repeated symbol tells us where her healing is. And it tracks when she can't paint and she's stuck and she doesn't know what she's able to do. That's the beginning of Mist and Fury, where she's so dead inside that she can't even bring herself to paint. And it's a very on the nose way of looking at her psychological state. Just because something is on the nose and obvious, and again, someone might be like, that wasn't obvious to me, but once you know these things and you're looking for it, you might be like, oh, that is very obvious. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing at all, because there's always going to be deeper things. So having on the nose is very good.
And it reflects the human experience.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that is something that the author is doing intentionally. That is not something that just like naturally comes. I mean, it naturally comes in the sense of the story, but SJM isn't saying, well, Farah can paint at any given moment. No, she can't paint because she's struggling.
One of the things that I think makes psychoanalytical lens so fun to use is because when you have something happen to a character and they react away and you're like, that feels out of character.
Yeah.
That is a perfect moment to use the psychoanalytical lens because you're like, okay, why do I believe it's out of character? What has this character's experience been that teaches me that this is out of character? And have there been new experiences that would change the approach of this character that I've failed to clock?
And if you want to get complicated and bring up a lens that we're not mentioning here, it's the reader lens, where you have to analyze the reader, which is yourself and who is the audience who's taking it in. So that if you're like, hey, this feels out of character, then you kind of have to ask yourself, A, is this
a writing problem?
Yeah, is this a true reflection of the character and it's something I need to pick up on? B,
or am I the problem?
Yeah, am I the problem? So there's also the reader lens, and then there's an author lens, because usually in literature, you kind of have to believe the author's dead and you can't actually bring the author into the work. But then there's another lens where you have to you look into the history of the author. So that's all.
A perfect example of the author lens is Interview with the Vampire. Learning that Anne Rice wrote the book in response to her 5-year-old daughter dying of leukemia.
Interview with the Vampire, Joyla Club, House on Mango Street.
Yeah. All of our academia unlocked.
Another example is in The Weaver's Cottage. Again, I know. It's a gift that just keeps giving.
It really does.
Yeah. And Farah's panic isn't just about being eaten. She is locked in a small space, and that is freaking her out because under the mountain, there was that whole experience and the cottage. We know she hated being in that little tiny cottage. And that lens allows you to catch the trauma that's echoed in this scene. And the plot doesn't just announce it, but you can start to see it of, oh, wow, there's a lot more going on here than just scary witch, don't eat me.
Excuse us while we hydrate.
Honey, what are you listening to?
Mom!
Your teen might not share everything with you, but teens share everything with each other. And certain everyday behaviors, like sharing food, drinks, or kisses, could mean sharing bacteria that can cause meningococcal disease, known as meningitis. Although meningitis is uncommon, about 1 in 10 who develop it will die. Ask your teen's doctor about missing meningitis vaccinations. Learn more at meningitis.com. Vaccination may not protect all recipients. Sponsored by GSK.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Bring a date, your squad, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
And another example, our final example here, but not the last example that's available, is that Nesta, at the start of Silver Flames, there is a lot of wine. She's in isolation, all of the one-night stands, and it's deflection and it's diversion of her trauma that she's experiencing. There are a lot of people who talk about her having a drinking problem and is an alcoholic, to which we would argue, no, she is not. She's abusing alcohol. One does not necessarily equal the other. And I mean, an alcoholic abuses alcohol, but someone who abuses alcohol isn't necessarily an alcoholic. And at this point, I don't think she is. I think she's abusing it. And we can see that because this is a trauma response. As she deals with her trauma, her craving for alcohol goes away. And then you start to watch when and why a character diverts attention. Why is she not thinking about alcohol anymore? Why is she not thinking about one-night stands? Probably because she has a perpetual one-night stand right there with Cassian. But that's because the wound is healing. She is going down the stairs determined to get a drink, determined to just block out all the things going on in her head. And by the time the book is done and she goes down the steps, it's because she has reached her ultimate moment of healing.
All good examples. Another example of the psychoanalytical lens with Nesta in Silver Flames is every time she refuses to think about the fact that she and Cassian are mates.
Yeah.
Same with him. And for her, it's because from a psychoanalytical lens, she's not ready to be fully Fae. She's not ready to completely lose her humanity as she sees it because she never wanted to be Fae.
Yeah. I think that the psychoanalytical lens also pairs nicely with the feminist lens because you can look at moments of Reese's treatment of Farah and his residual or continued trauma from the sexual abuse that he received under the mountain with Amarantha. And again, the feminist lens, you're like, why are we talking sexual abuse in the feminist lens? Because we are. You guys can make that bridge, okay? Like, I know it's not reserved just for women, but it's unfortunately a very common experience within, I was about to say the feminine archetype. That's really depressing. No, within women's stories, unfortunately. But that's something that you can start to say like, okay, well, there's this psychological thing happening. Well, what's going on in the power dynamic? What Marxist things are going on? What's going on with the feminist lens? What things are happening there too? So, just another great cheese to pair with wine.
And last but not least, I'm so glad that this naturally fell in this order.
It's so true. I thought you did it on purpose.
I did not. Yes, I did. I did it alphabetically, kind of. Lastly is queer theory. And what do I mean by queer theory? Queer theory is looking at the subtext or overtness of otherness in text, whether it was intentionally written to have a queer undertone or not. The biggest core questions to ask when utilizing queer theory is which identities or actions are treated as quote unquote other? How is gender, sex, or desire performed in public versus secret? Or, those things that are metaphorical for gender, sex, or desire. How are those performed in public or secret? We talked a lot about this with Interview with a Vampire. We talked about this with Carmilla, how vampirism is symbolic for queer desire. But if we're looking at ACOTAR, we can go back to the Moore experience in Wings and Ruin and her coming out to Feyre. Moore keeps her sexuality secret for a long time. She fears exposure because, quote, keeping this one thing that has remained wholly mine, which I understand. The queer theory lens illuminates how otherness gets pushed into hiding. The same concept of like vampires always being in the dark, right? They can never be in the light. And how ownership of one's identity becomes an act of survival and power. Look again at Louis. He is a lesser vampire because he does not embrace his vampire nature. He does not feed on humans. So Lestat sees him as less powerful.
Yeah. Mild spoilers for Throne of Glass. But one of my all-time favorites where you don't have to look at an actual queer character because we have another example, but we argue that Dorian's magic is a metaphor for potentially his queer identity and his love for Kale, because the only time that it initially flares up is like to protect Kale and he's trying to hide it and he doesn't want to come out to people. So it's moments like that. Did SJM make that a metaphor for queer identity? No. Who knows? Maybe she did.
But does it read like it?
Yeah, I personally believe and hope that in ACOTAR 6, the concept of the mate and what is meant to be, like what nature decides, I hope there's going to be a lot of queer theory within that. And I think there could be a very powerful statement in there.
Yeah,
whether she does it or not, who knows? But I might analyze it that way regardless.
Yeah. If you want to see queer theory in action, go listen to our Crown of Midnight season. It is.
I loved it.
Wait, was it Crown of Midnight?
Or was it second book?
Is it not also in Air of Fire?
Yeah. Yeah, Air of Fire too.
Maybe it's mostly Air of Fire. I think it's mostly Air of Fire.
Yeah.
Other things to think about when trying to read through the queer theory, regardless of whether there is a queer character. Any character who themselves is viewed as other, or they have traits or qualities that are viewed as other, can be potentially read through the lens of queer theory, especially if that individual rejects societal norms or religious norms. What they do is being done in secret, if they're afraid of rejection or exposure, and the quality of otherness, so whatever trait of otherness they possess, is either treated like an illness, something to be avoided, or is treated like they are superior. They are greater than the rest of humanity. Thinking vampirism.
Interview with the Vampire is a great one because everyone's like super queer and they're in charge.
Yeah. Fabulous. All right. So those are our 8 top lenses that we encourage you to watch out for in your own reading, regardless of whether you're reading an SJM book, a book club book, or doing something on your own. The cheat sheet that we've created distills each of these lenses down to a description, a core question, and a list of what to watch for. It's 3 pages. It's designed to be with you for you to use. If you've always wondered, how do I tab a book? You could pick a lens and tab blue tabs only for the feminist lens and pink tabs only for queer theory. That's one way you can use this cheat sheet, or you can use it just to challenge yourself on your next reread.
You also can make up your own literary lenses. I did for my bachelor's degree and submitted it to an undergraduate conference, and I won that shit. So I did it. It's what lens? The female alteration lens, and which is actually a great lens. I should go find that paper. Yeah. Anyway, it was a great lens, and I think that you just have to like be concise on what you're looking at, and you just throw the word lens on it. Truly and utterly, it's like making up bullshit on the spot. The thing is, art has meaning. You have to sometimes find meaning in that art. It does not take away the meaning you find, and it does not take away the art. Like, it only enhances the art. And if you can look at a painting of a blank blue, you know that like famous painting, and it's just like a blank blue canvas, and people are like, why the hell is that like art? Because it's just a blank blue canvas. But if you look at the history and the artist and the way he invented that color blue and the whole story, you're like, wow, that is art. If people can find meaning in scribbling on a canvas on a wall, then you can fucking find meaning in any book.
Yeah. Now, it's okay if you don't pick these things up in your first read of a book.
You shouldn't. I don't.
No, I mean, the whole point of a first read is to enjoy the ride. The whole point is like, wow, this plot and these characters were bomb, or they bombed. It could be either. The lenses are most effective when you already know what's going to happen, when you know that where the story is going to go, and you can start to identify the finer details, the patterns, and the themes. And again, it's okay if it's only one lens. It's okay if it's one lens one time and another lens another time.
If you're like, wait a minute, am I doing psychoanalytical, or am I doing feminist, or am I doing Marxist? The answer is probably just yes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this cheat sheet is free. Again, you can go to our website, BookTokForBookTok.com. More easily, probably just link in the show notes of this episode. You can also, if you're on our social media frequently, look at the bio, our link in bio, our link tree. We will also include a link there. We'd love for you to use this on your next read. Tag us if you do. We would love to see your annotations, your hot takes, or ask us like, hey, is this eco-criticism? Am I applying it correctly? We want to know, because this is what makes Book Talk for Book Talk so much fun for us.
Because you can use one lens and argue in absolute 2 directions. Just because you're using one lens and I'm looking at something in the feminist lens, and I have done this in past seasons before where I'm like, well, I could use a feminist lens and I could look at it in this way, or I could make a complete another argument and look at it this way. And one of my favorite things that we heard in class was that a book should be able to be viewed with one lens. A good book is usually with 2 or more lenses. Great book is like 3 or more. And it's, just keeping that in mind, as you're doing this.
Yeah. Now, as a little teaser, this is what I'm hoping is the start of more resources to come to help you on your journey to do your own literary analysis without us, because we get so much joy out of it that we want you to have that same joy with or without us leading the way. And if you're familiar with cinema and analyzing movies or films, like, a lot of the theories apply across both literature and the visual arts. So have fun.
It could be used for fun and frankly, to feel superior. And I just want to say it as it is, because whenever I see someone online who just talks shit on books that I absolutely love and adore, I get to clap back with these. They're just words that kind of intimidate people. Like, that's the funny thing is, like, you know, you could be like, well, using the psychoanalytical lens, using the narrator, I can't remember the long word. Narratological lens, you know, like, you don't have to say unreliable narrator. Say the narratological lens. Boom, you're going to shut them up. You know, use this for evil. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Is
Lean
like,
in.
it's just, yeah, like, you can shut people up with these things. And, you know, and I think that
Can I reframe it?
Yeah, no, I mean, go ahead. I said what I said.
This can be your superpower.
For evil.
For good or for evil. It's a superpower.
So we got a different question. Let's go back to our original question.
Does analysis deepen the magic or break the spell?
I like how you wrote the answer next to it. I'm going to say my own. Yes, the answer is yes. Like, I think there's been times where deepening it breaks it. And I think sometimes when you deepen the moment, it can break you. Because there have been, I can't list off the top of my head, but there's been so many times that we've done it either through an ACOTAR book or in one of our book clubs where we did flash analysis, where we talk about it. And I mind you, so let me say this, where we talk about it and we get bummed out and we're just sort of like, oh my God, this actually made me so sad. I want to emphasize something here. Most of the time, our smart thoughts don't come individually. They come through discussion.
Yeah. You should see our notes versus what we record.
Yeah, truly. So I think this is a great tool to have with someone. You know, bring it to your book club, bring it, you know, to a friend, a sibling, a family member, anyone. And because you won't have your thoughts until you talk about it with someone. And then you're like, yeah, actually, you're right. And so I think that, like, we deepen it when we're talking to each other because we're able to come about it in two different ways. And we know each other and we can talk about it in a way that makes sense to one another. And when you're able to deepen it, I think when you deepen something, it breaks a certain spell of, like, the good vibes you had before.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, like, it can deepen the meaning in a way that is like, wow, SJM is amazing. Oh my God. And other times it can ruin the story for you. And you really just don't know what's going to happen.
But sometimes ruining the story is good. Like, you're like, oh, I didn't want to know that, but now I do. Like, a way of looking at that is Interview with a Vampire, where, you know, we had to prepare. And one of the ways to prepare is you look at the author and their experience. And then you're like, wait a minute, she wrote this after her daughter died. And now you're analyzing it through a lens of an author who is a parent who had their child pass. And you're looking at all of the ways that that reflects in it. And you're just like, well, I don't feel good anymore. I think literature, no matter how feel good it is meant to evoke. And sometimes, unfortunately, the most powerful emotions of evoking is bummer. So, you know, and then there's other times where it's so beautiful it makes you cry. One of the climax at the very end of Crescent City, I'm just going to say La Habba, and that's all I'm going to leave it at. And you could analyze that moment, and then it could leave you in tears on the podcast, you know?
Yeah.
So what do you think? Would you agree with what I said, or would you like to add to it? Or
no, I totally agree. I think you perfectly captured our experience.
So if you guys want to be bummed out, like, you should listen to us more.
I mean, listen to our first episode of Joy Luck Club that's going to come out. Even I started crying at the end, guys.
Yeah.
So
again, literature, books, all books are literature. All books, it's art. And art is meant to evoke. And when you think about something enough, it's going to invoke it. And invoking usually, even when you're happy, I'll cry. I'll cry right now.
Please don't. Your makeup's done.
My makeup looks so good, and I have 2 bars to go to today. So here's a question for y'all at home. Which lens do you want to try first? And on which book? Genuinely. Tell us. Like, go download the worksheet. Don't tell us until you downloaded the worksheet, though. That's my rule.
Cheat sheet.
Thank you. Don't tell us which one you want to do until you download the cheat sheet. It will be in the show notes. You can click the link to it. and then tell us, and then do your reread and share what you find. And the best submissions might end up on a future mini episode. And if we ever decide to pick up the gold star system where we just randomly email you a gold star with zero context, which I really like that idea because it's easy because we don't have to do anything. Like it would just be a gold star in the mail and that's it. Oh, we should do a gold star postcard.
That would be cute.
And that's it. And we just have a stamp that says good job. Yeah. And then we leave it as is.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
And maybe you'll get a gold star. Who knows?
All right. Thanks for listening to this special episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Don't forget to grab your free Critical Literary Lenses cheat sheet using the link in our show notes, the link in our bio on our social media channels, or at Book Talk for Book Talk.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps other readers find us. And of course, we'd love to hear what you thought of today's episode. Share your comments through our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com, and we might feature your feedback in a future mini episode or in a Patreon exclusive episode.
For merch and more ways to support the show, head to booktalkforbooktalk.com. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye. I always forget how long summer is in California, and all of my work clothes are geared towards fall, winter. I need more summer appropriate staples.
I'm going to be going to Portugal at the end of the summer, and I need Quince to help me with summer vacation clothes because they have literally everything.
They make elevated essentials using premium materials like European linen, organic cotton, and washable silk, which is my personal favorite, without the traditional retail markup.
They also have amazing shoes. I got their ballerina Mary Jane flats in brown, and I will be walking Portugal in that the entire time. They are so comfortable.
I also recently discovered that they have really fabulous 14 karat gold jewelry. Everything is subtle, delicate, and just classy. Everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands because they work with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen. So you're paying for exceptional quality, not brand markup.
Quince has everything you need, from apparel to home to bedding to bath and all of the kitchen essentials and furniture. Make your summer wardrobe feel easier.
Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, for free shipping and 365-day returns.
Quince.com/booktalk.